Pat Perez never pictured himself playing golf, especially as a career. He went to a golf course to work, not to play or practice. He spent a huge chunk of his time as a teenager cleaning carts and picking up range balls. The rest of his days were spent experimenting with drugs and drinking. These experiences definitely shaped Pat's social life, even after he eventually took up playing golf. Pat Perez had just a single PGA Tour title 20 years into turning professional, a chip on his shoulder, and surgery on the other. However, this was the same golfer that defeated Tiger Woods during the Junior World Amateur Championship, an experience he looks back on with satisfaction, especially as Tiger Woods turned out to be the most successful golfer in the history of golf. So how did a young man who never saw golf in his future end up defeating one of the greatest to ever play the game? Let's find out. Welcome to Golf Links. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get updates on new video drops. Born on the 1st of March in 1976 in Arizona, the American star began his professional career in 1997. However, it took Pat Perez 12 years before getting his hand on the first PGA Tour title. On the 22nd of January 2009, Pat Perez hit a 2-round record low score to par in PGA Tour history during the Bob Hope Classic. This unusual feat would mean he could tie or set many new records. However, that wasn't the most important event that day, as Pat Perez defeated John Merrick by 2 strokes to seal the victory. The 2010 season may not have borne the necessary fruit for Pat Perez. Still, he did let the world know that before his PGA Tour title in 2009, he played a pivotal part in the victory of the baseball team Philadelphia Phillies in the World Series. Incidentally, Pat Burrell was a neighbor to Pat Perez. His closeness to the Arkansas-born baseball player meant that Pat Perez could follow his friend to watch some of the Philadelphia Phillies games. However, it didn't end with just watching games. Pat Perez often visited the locker room of the Major League Baseball team. In an interview the year after his victory in California, Pat Perez described his relationship with all players of the Philadelphia Phillies to be very close, while claiming that he owned a locker in the team's changing room. Despite not being the team's coach, Pat Perez would cheer the group from time to time, and also wasted no time in letting them know how much he prayed for their victory always. Sadly, Pat Burrell would later leave the Philadelphia Phillies after their World Series heroics. The baseball star's move to Tampa Bay Rays meant Pat Perez no longer had any reason to visit Philadelphia Phillies locker room. To Pat Perez, the news of his friend's move to another team was more terrible than sustaining an injury. With nothing much to show for his 2010 to 2014 golf season, Pat Perez suffered a shoulder injury in 2015, which kept him out of many tournaments. However, it seemed like things were looking up when the golfer came back in 2016 to win the OHL Classic at Mayakoba. On the final day of the showdown in Mexico, Gary Woodland, who had held the lead for the better part of the tournament, failed to maintain his consistent form following a series of avoidable bogeys. With Pat Perez looking fresh from a long injury layoff, he kept himself composed to hit a winning record of 21 under par, which was enough to seal his second PGA Tour title in 8 years. The victory also meant Pat Perez would become the first player since Harrison Frazier in 2011 to clinch the PGA Tour title while sitting on a medical extension. Unlike the lengthy period it took for him to win his first and second titles, adding a third to the list wasn't that difficult for the American golfer. However, before going into the game, he spent much of his time drinking rather than practicing. The 2009 Bob Hope Classic winner had thought his chances of putting up a spectacular performance at the CIMB Classic were slim, especially when he had already experienced a terrible outing at the TPC Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Surprisingly, when he did summon up the courage to compete at the 2017 CIMB Classic, Pat Perez won by 4 strokes ahead of Keegan Bradley, sealing his 3rd career trophy. Unfortunately, Pat's attitude outside of his professional life was starting to have a nasty effect on his career on the golf course. His eating habits were far from healthy, as most of his favorite things were never beyond swearing, drinking, smoking, and stuffing himself full of bad meals. Of course, topping this list was his absolute hate for exercise. All these may not be the perfect recipe for success, but Pat Perez certainly rode his luck until it started to run out. Following his victory at the CIMB Classic, he sounded a clear warning to whoever cared to listen that he was not in any mood to change his bad diet or begin to work out to reduce even a single ounce of flesh on his already puffy shape. According to the then 41-year-old golfer, he wasn't looking to make new friends as he had his clique and wouldn't stop enjoying himself. Well, you can say that Pat Perez was the embodiment of the popular myth that golf was for older men looking only to have fun on the golf course. Regardless, his accomplishments keep defying his physical look and personal attitude to his fitness. During a post-tournament interview while replying to whether he had trained before his victory at the CIMB Classic, Pat Perez said he only drank and ate a lot while watching the President's Cup. The former PGA Tour player continued by saying his back problems and shoulder injuries had made him think he was seriously sick and also had him engaged in serious thoughts. He opened up that he never had any pressure when he began playing on the PGA Tour and only wanted to stay alive while enjoying the heat that came with playing on the PGA Tour. Pat Perez may have only 3 PGA titles to his name, but if his 2000 heroics at the Buy.com Ozarks Open is anything to be considered, then that's 4 total wins for the Arizona-born golf star. In 2021, Pat Perez let us in on a moment in junior high school when he couldn't afford to get a Jumpman 4, but he was lucky to find an old pair of Jordans from a trash can. Without wasting much time, he grabbed the shoes, cleaned them up, and soon became one of the few people around that owned Jordans. However, Pat Perez's successful journey to stardom meant that the 3-time PGA Tour winner could now get a full wardrobe of expensive Jordan collections, plus Michael Jordan's phone number on his contact list. The connection between the two athletes grew so strong that Michael Jordan sent some new Jordan footwears to the golf star while recuperating from his shoulder injury. Intriguingly, Pat Perez now boasts over 1,000 collections of Jordan shoes. The golf star is not just rich in shoes, but has made some decent money from playing golf over the last few decades. According to reputable sources like IMDb and Forbes, Pat Perez's assets in 2022 are worth about $13 million, with much of his wealth coming from a successful golf career and sponsorship deals with Callaway and Parsons Extreme Golf. However, it looks like the fortunes of the 46-year-old are about to change positively, and that means more money may be coming his way. In June of 2022, Pat Perez joined an increasing number of popular golfers to dump the PGA for the LIV Golf. This development means that Pat Perez is expected to resign his PGA membership. According to a recent memo released by the PGA Tour Commissioner, Pat Perez would have his name withdrawn from the FedEx Cup points list and also get banned from competing on the PGA Tour. This has definitely been an interesting period in the world of professional golf, especially as LIV Golf is gaining more momentum despite threats. So what does Pat Perez think about the ban and scathing criticism following his defection to the rival league? The outspoken golf star explained that he has no issue with several allegations of human rights abuses against the Saudi government, and had some not-so-friendly words for the PGA Tour. The 2017 CIMB Classic winner pointed to his absence at his child's birth during the 2021 FedEx playoffs as one of the reasons why the PGA Tour could sometimes be insensitive to golfers' plights. Quote, "I had to suck on my inability to welcome my son into the world. Although I played alright in the competition and made the cut, it still sucks that I would have to explain to my kid why I had to be absent from there," he said. Pat Perez is married to Ashley Perez, and they have 2 kids. The family of 4 currently lives in his mansion in Scottsdale, Arizona. At least, the golf star believes that LIV Golf won't uphold the restrictions he has had to play under ever since he joined the PGA Tour. While some may not agree with this, we're going to find out soon enough.